I saw Joe drinking a damn beer, and I wish I would have done the same. So maybe I'll do that next time.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you have to. Yeah, you got to prepare for the conversation. It doesn't just happen on its own, right?
That's what I was thinking about.
Well, I swung by the trailer and I thought about grabbing a bottle of wine. I still have leftover wine from our wedding, but I don't have a glass, so I thought it'd be a bit indulgent to be sitting here with an uncorked bottle of wine on the move. So I'm going with a little bit of water right now.
So you both just got married.
Ben just got married. I'm getting married in September.
You're getting married in September. That's right. Okay. Well, congratulations to you as well, Ben.
Thank you. What about yourself? Are you married?
I'm not married. No, I do have a girlfriend though, but not married yet.
Yeah.
And well, so Ben, I was just telling him about the bachelor party. He was there at the Gold Cup, so I didn't.
Were you competing?
So I work full time for a trainer named Julie Gamina, and she has a stable full of steeplechase horses, and we had 2 horses running that day. And I told Joe they didn't run very well. It was wet ground, heavy going, and they didn't travel very well in it. Some horses prefer hard ground, some horses prefer soft ground, and we figured out that day our horses prefer hard ground. So live and learn.
So what does that look like? Kind of like a steeplechase operation. Does she? I guess is she a head trainer, so to speak, and then she's got like client horses, or like does she own the horses, or like how does that?
So she's more of she's not what we would call a big operation. We've got at the most, if we can keep 9 horses in training, we're doing pretty well. And she and her husband owned a few, but then she also has a few different syndicates with different owners. She'll buy them herself, and then she'll sell them out, sell shares of them to other people who are in the sport.
Okay. And just so we get it like all labeled out there for maybe someone who doesn't know anything about steeplechasing, which I was a little bit familiar, but I just went to my first steeplechase this month. These are not like flat track dirt races. This is not the Kentucky Derby.
No, it's not. It's all on turf, and it's all goes from your average hurdle race is 2 miles and some change. It goes up from 2 miles in a furlong, which is 660 feet. So, and then the longest hurdle races go up to about 2.5 miles, which was run down in like Iroquois recently. And then your timber racing, which is over solid stacked wood fences. The average race for that, the average distance for that is 3 miles. And then there's a couple races like the Gold Cup and the Maryland Hunt Cup, which are 4 miles.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So would you, for people who like, maybe they watch the Triple Crown and that's like their exposure to horse racing.
Yeah, most people, yeah.
Yeah, compared to those horses, you're still racing thoroughbreds, right? I assume. Are they bred a little different? Would you say those horses are maybe like you try to get them a little more rideable, or since it's a little more of a tactical race? Like, they obviously have to have some more.
Yeah. So the thing is that every steeplechase horse. Between, you all are frozen.
I'm saying flat track. I don't know if there's like a proper term for it. But are there differences between kind of the more mainstream racing and steeplechase horses?
Oh wait, y'all there? Y'all froze on me.
Yeah, we're still here.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so sorry, you were frozen for about 10 seconds. But I heard the question. So all the steeplechase horses are actually originally all flat track horses. Okay. So it's not back in the day, like in the 20th century, really, up until maybe the 60s and 70s, some people did breed for steeplechase horses, and you would go for stallions on the flat track that would go longer distances. But there's not really an industry for breeding steeplechase horses anymore in America. So we all get our horses from off the flat track. We claim them off the flat track. We look for horses that are probably just not quite fast enough, or they run a little out the back, and they probably just want a little more distance. And so we look for those characteristics, and then we bring them in to our training methods, and we just train them a little slower, and we just increase the distance of which they train. And then, of course, they got to learn to jump. But jumping's actually one of the easier things to do. Most horses know how to jump. You just got to teach them the mechanics of it. And you start small and build your way up.
So with all that, I guess if you're going to make a living in the steeplechase world, or even just play in it at all, then kind of evaluating those horses is going to be a big part of it then. Right, like
it is
evaluating those off the track horses.
Yeah, and exactly. It's hard to know, to get an idea for what you want, because you could get in flat racing they have things called, the highest rated races are called graded stakes races, and the nicest bred horses in the country. And sometimes, even though they're the fastest horses in the country, they might not, take to steeplechase racing because they don't have the good bone, or they can't go the distance. So you look for horses that are running at least a mile on the flat track, usually during the turf season, because horses do prefer dirt or turf. They have a preference. Some run better on dirt, some run better on turf. So you're primarily looking for horses that have run on the turf, and you're looking for horses that they're kind of always in the money, like hitting fourth, fifths, but they're being competitive still. And you say, well, that's a nice horse running in good company on the flat track, and they drop it into a claiming race. That might be something you go pick up and see if you can train it to go 2 miles.
Okay.
That's how I look at it. I mean, we've gotten horses off the track that have never won a race. They're slow as a boat. Big 3-year-olds that probably just aren't mature enough to produce any money in the flat track business, because they start racing at 3 usually, sometimes 2. Like if they're going to the Derby, they got to start at 2 years old to get the qualifications to run in the Kentucky Derby. A lot of horses don't start till they're 3, and they're paying a day rate by the trainer every day. So if they're not bringing home a check, halfway through their 3-year-old year, people will drop them into cheap claiming races, or they'll just give up on them and rehome them as something else. So you can get a really nice 3-year-old that's only ran a handful of times, and it just hasn't matured to what it can actually be yet. And that happens all the time. My boss just picked up 2 really nice 3-year-olds, big bone thoroughbreds, that were just not going to produce what they needed to anytime soon. So she bought one for $1, and it was a really nicely bred horse, and it's already jumping, little rolls and grids, and it's got a great mind. It drags you to the fences. It's telling you that it wants to jump. It's telling you that it wants to train. It just wasn't going to be competitive on the flat track. So we were able to, but you build connections with trainers on the flat track, people who work at the flat track, and they can tell you, like, hey, this horse is no good for us. You can buy it off of us.
Gotcha.
So, I don't know a ton about steeplechase myself. There might be a little bit.
Most people don't.
But, in my experience with it is just watching it, and mostly watching runs of the steeplechase fails on YouTube. And so, obviously, racing, you're trying to win. I get that part. But you keep mentioning durability in the horses, and I assume part of the durability has to do with, you're going over these obstacles and you're trying to avoid injury and all that sort of stuff. What is this might be a stupid question, but what is the main cause of those wrecks? Like, what goes wrong? Because I don't know much about jumping or anything about racing.
Yeah, so that's a little thing. Next time you watch the fails, and you'll notice the horses usually keep running with the field after they lose their jockey. And if you ever watch a horse without a jockey going, they never take a bad jump. They're and if you ever see a horse fall without a jockey, you don't want to ride that horse at all. But that usually doesn't happen. So usually when a horse falls in a race, it's usually sometimes the jockey might be asking him to go from a wrong position, or he might be shifting his weight when he shouldn't be shifting his weight, and the horse, is second guessing itself and puts a leg down when it shouldn't and stumbles on the other side. So, you don't want as a trainer and someone who's also has been a jockey, sometimes a lot of it's rider error. Sometimes we have the saying, like, you got to sit chilly in the seat. You got to let the horse do the jumping. And so when you're going into your fences, going at those speeds, sometimes 30 miles an hour, the best thing you can do is kind of just keep a supportive leg going into your fences, and then just look up and let the horse take its own spot. And that comes from training and schooling at home. When you're schooling horses, teaching them how to jump hurdles, you don't really want to tell them you don't really want to see a stride. If y'all, Joe, I think I've Facebook stalked both of you. I saw you did some jumping in the past as well. Ben, I don't know if you have or not.
No.
But
I grew up fox hunting and stuff like that.
Oh, you did? Okay, I love fox hunting. Yeah. That's a great way to learn to really not see your stride. You just get in tight situations, and you just got to let the horse do the jumping. I was riding with a lady one day. We were schooling some timber fences, and she was going to ride a local point-to-point. And she said, Sam, I'm a little nervous at jumping at speed. I'm not very good at it. And I said, well, Jane, that's why the horse is doing it and not you. Horses don't want to fall. You just got to let them do their job the best of their ability, and that's staying out of their way. But when you're going 30 miles an hour and you got horses to your left and right in front of you, mistakes happen. But you try to do the best you can at home to prepare them for situations like that. And it's all about getting their mechanics down. You don't have to be jumping big fences at home. You just got to be jumping small fences, 2 feet high, just so that they get used to picking up their feet and putting them down, going through grids, putting poles down on the ground, so they have to get used to putting their feet in awkward situations and learning how to correct themselves if a bad fence does come.
That makes sense.
It's really interesting you say that. So we've been fortunate on here to have a lot of really good horsemen on the podcast, and part of that group has been a lot of like rein cow horse guys who, they do the boxing and the cutting and like all these different things with their horses, and it's a different deal, right, working a cow, but they actually kind of almost say a similar trend of like, that horse needs to kind of learn where to like take over and fill in a little bit. Right. Obviously whether it's going over a jump or working a cow or whatever job you want to teach them, you kind of have to set the mechanics up, but there's an element of like them learning to control their own body. And once they get that, like, now you kind of need to take a little responsibility for this, right? Like you said, I'm not going to pick your spot for you. Like you kind of figure this out, horse, because you can do it better than I can trying to micromanage you.
Yeah, you can't do it all for them. And because trust me, the last, jockeys don't want to fall, and a horse sure as hell doesn't want to fall. They're going to do everything they can to not fall over a fence. And the jockey's got to worry about pacing the horse, putting it in the right position, when to make their run, when to hold it. They have to be worried about what horses are setting the pace. They got to be worried about where they are in the course. They can't be doing the jumping for the horse. They got to be worrying about other things. And that's one thing you can't help them with. Sometimes when you get really good, you can tell them when to take off from. If you see a stride and commit to it, you could gain a length or two or a better positioning. But, when you're taking that kind of risk, they are professionals. They're all very good riders. So when they see a stride and you see them commit to it, riding down to it, maybe they give them a slap on the shoulder, you got to be committed 110% to take that risk. And I've seen it pay off really well, and I've seen it not pay. Then they sometimes take a bad fence and lose lengths for it. But a good steeplechase horse, can back off themselves, readjust, get in tight to a fence, and get over it safely. So yeah, the horse has got to be trained to know what it's doing. It's not just running and jumping blindly out there. They're thinking about where their feet are going, and they do have to be, but they do have to be trained to do it, and that's just repetition. Because jumping's very easy for a horse. It doesn't take much to get a horse to learn how to jump, but it does take a long time to get a horse to do it well and to do it consistently well. Because you got to jump 12 fences going 30 miles an hour. Sometimes you got to jump 21 fences going 24 miles an hour, like in the timber races. And the Maryland Hunt Cup fences, they're damn near 5 feet tall. They're huge timber fences. So horses got to know what they're doing.
Speed times height. Yeah, you don't want to wreck that. So where did you get started with all this? Did you grow up in a horse family? How did you get interested in just riding in general? Let's start there.
So, born into it. My father is from he's from Warwickshire, England, and he grew up fox hunting and steeplechase racing over there. And he came over. He left England when he was young and moved to Ireland to race steeplechase and to hunt and train horses. He trained horses his entire life, mostly for fox hunting, but primarily steeplechasing. But he got a job in Virginia in the 80s, fox hunting hounds. So he was a huntsman of a local pack in Hamilton, Virginia, for a long time. And but while he was an amateur steeplechase jockey. He did it for the thrills, really. But he trained for local owners, and then they'd sell them to bigger stables, things of that nature, or run them himself. And then my mother, she had a horse stables in Maryland where I was born, and she had I think they had 55 horses, like show hunter barn, eventers, boarding facility, really. Lessons, they did lessons in local shows. So I grew up right into it, and started riding when I was 3, lead line, and started doing little hunter shows, walk, trot, canter stuff. And I was terrified to ride when I was a kid. I'd cry all the time, fucking petrified to do it. And but then you get used to being on the pony, you get more used to it, and then fox hunting really helped. Had not too devilish of ponies that would take care of me. And then when I was about 9, my dad said if I wanted to start pony racing, and that back then was just like you go to the point-to-points. You have small, medium, large pony divisions, and they back you up about a quarter of a mile, drop a flag, and you just haul ass to the finish, screaming or crying or trying to hold on to your pony. And that kind of escalated into, started galloping my dad's race horses. And then when I was 14, and then when you're 16, you can start riding against the adults in the local point-to-points. So that's what I started doing when I was 16. Started riding the local point-to-points, and then went into the sanction races at 16. And just minus college, I've just been doing it ever since.
Okay, and could you fill me in? What is a point-to-point?
Oh, sorry, yeah. So a point-to-point is a steeplechase race.
I'm going to stop you a lot on these little terms. I might have to get an explanation.
Yeah, sorry.
Like I said, I don't know anything about the racing world.
Yeah, so a point-to-point is a steeplechase race that is not sanctioned. It's no purse money. And you don't have to be professional to ride in it. Then they're held by your local fox hunts. So I hunt with the Piedmont Foxhounds, and every spring they hold their point-to-point, May 26th, or that weekend of March. And it starts, Maryland has them, Pennsylvania has them, Virginia has the most of them. It starts in beginning of March, and it goes through, last point-to-point is actually Potomac, Maryland had the last point to point this past weekend, and they're every weekend. So pretty much a lot of amateurs. You can ride in it as an amateur, and they have hurdle racing and timber racing. And point to point steeplechasing was originally created for people to show off their fox hunters. It started in Cork, Ireland in 1752. I Googled it before this. And the term steeplechase comes from racing from steeple to steeple. It was 4 miles from one church in Ireland to the next. And that's where the term steeplechasing came from. And you would get from point A to point B as fast as you could on whoever thought they had the better fox hunter, jumping natural obstacles that were in your way. And it eventually adapted into, courses, oval courses, and it made its way over to America when, people started coming over here. So a point to point is just a locally held steeplechase that doesn't have any sanctioned rules. There's no restrictions. As long as you're 16, you can be 100 years old if you want to and go ride a point to point, or you don't have to. If you just learned to ride last year and, you get a good vouch from someone saying you can hold your own, you can go enter your horse in it. It's got to be a thoroughbred, but go for it. And but most of the sanctioned races now, point to points now, are all sanctioned horses prepping for a race like Gold Cup. So they'll use it because they're not going a full 100%. They're probably just going like 80, just to get some experience, get a race under their belt as a prep. And then I do the Fox Hunter Timber Series with my horses. Like I fox hunt them, and then they have a division. So there's like 8 races on the card at a point to point, sometimes 6. And one of the races is strictly for fox hunters. You can't have the Gold Cup winner running in that race. It can't be a professional jockey riding in that race. It has to just be someone like myself who loves to fox hunt and loves to race, and you can go run your horse in it. And it used to be a bigger following. People would put in their best fox hunters and go see who'd win 3 mile timber race, and it's kind of died down. There's not as many people who do it anymore because the majority of all the horses now are all top sanctioned horses just getting a prep. So sometimes I got to go race against them. They put me, if my race doesn't fill, I go in with them and then get my ass handed to me. And then they'll have races just for ladies only, ladies timber riders. They have just amateur hurdle races. Then they have their open races where the professionals ride, but I can ride in there too. And I do sometimes if my boss wants a younger horse just to get a good trip around, and I'm capable enough I can get the horse around and get a good trip and get my thrills for the weekend. But there's no purse money, so there's no pressure. You can just go and have some fun, get the horse experience, running in a group of horses, jumping side by side, going different paces. So that's what a point to point is.
Gotcha. So it'd be like the equivalent of like a schooling show or something.
A schooling show, yeah. I mean, you're still going pretty fast, but in a sanctioned race, jockeys are sending it, 2 fences, 3 fences from home. But at a point to point, you're kind of bottling your horse up to like the last fence and then letting it run. So it's a little more contained. It's not wide open. But sometimes when you get a good group of guys, like if I get some friends, we get a point to point. I got a couple buddies who said they'll run in them next year. It gets pretty competitive. And you run the whole series. You're trying to win points to win the trophy at the end of the season, and you can get some pretty good racing going.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, it sounds like that's a pretty necessary
I didn't know
event.
the whole background of that.
Yeah, and it's a good fundraiser for the hunts, and it's a really cool culture. It's a lot of people. You get to go and watch these some of these horses get imported from Ireland and England for like $100,000, and they're running at your local point to point. And because over in England and Ireland and in France, steeplechasing is very popular. They do breed for steeplechasing over there. Like they won't run their horses till they're 3, or They don't even run them on the flat, like the flat track over here. They breed them solely for steeplechase racing.
Okay, so what's the steeplechase network? Like, if I want to roll up to a local steeplechase nearest me and check it out, how am I going to find that?
National Steeplechase Association.com. So it's the NSA. They've got all the lists of the racing calendar for the spring, summer, and fall. So the spring season's over now, and we got a couple weeks downtime, and then there's a summer season that kicks off down at New Kent, Virginia, at Colonial Downs. They do there's a Colonial Downs is a flat track, but once a week they hold steeplechase races, just hurdle racing, no timber racing, and purse money's pretty good too. So we'll do that from July up until September, and then that summer season, and then there's also some racing in Saratoga, New York. That's where all the big graded stakes steeplechase races will run. And that's in the summer. And then in the fall, we go back to our courses designed for steeplechasing, like Great Meadows, Foxfield down in Charlottesville, Montpelier, and Orange. So the NSA is the website. That's the governing body of the sanctioned racing and steeplechasing. I don't know if y'all heard any of that.
Did we lose him this time?
Yeah, I think he blocks out. Same for me as he does for you.
Did y'all get any of that? Y'all froze. I froze on you, I think.
No, you froze for the last 30 seconds or so.
Yeah, the last thing I heard was up in New York.
So up in New York, up in New York, they got sanctioned races. They have big money steeplechase races, and that goes up until September, and then the fall steeplechase season starts, where we go back to our tracks that are designated for steeplechasing, like Great Meadow, Foxfield down in Charlottesville, Montpelier down in Orange. There's a really great steeplechase track in Middleburg called Glenwood Park. Middleburg spring races and Middleburg fall races are held there. That's a great time if y'all ever have a chance to go. The Middleburg spring races is a blast, and Middleburg fall races. You can see the whole course. And but the NSA, anyways, is the governing body of the Steeplechase Association in America. So you can look up the National Steeplechase Association, and they'll have where all the races are throughout the year on there. And then follow them on Facebook, and they have a Instagram page and things like that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool.
And then for the point-to-point season, it's a little harder to find them because you're not really in the community. You might not know what's going on. If you're not a part of the local fox hunt or live locally and know that they usually go on every spring. So that's a little harder to find out. There's a website called Central Entry Office. It doesn't really scream steeplechasing, but that's where all the calendar is for the point-to-point circuit. And $20 gets you in. You can put up a tailgate. It's a lot of fun. It's usually out in damn cow field for a point-to-point. It's just that they put some fences up in.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like that might be my speed. So is a lot of steeplechase allocated to the East Coast and specifically like the Mid-Atlantic region here, or is it all around the country?
No, just the East Coast.
Huh.
It goes up to New York down to everywhere in between, except I don't think there's any race in North Carolina. But there's got a race in Georgia. They got a race in Tennessee. They used to have one in Kentucky, but they got rid of that. Florida had one last year. Florida's got one in the fall. A lot of it's primarily Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania, though, and Delaware.
Wow.
But yeah, once you get over the Blue Ridge Mountains, you're not going to see much steeplechasing. Yeah. And that's just the culture of the area. It's fox hunting. It all kind of stems from fox hunting, and that's where it all just kind of thrived. There's fox hunts all over the country, but it's a lot of money and a lot to do to put on a sanctioned steeplechase race. It takes a village to set one up, and it's a lot of work. So you really got to enjoy doing it for all the people to volunteer to put them on, and then setting up a circuit, the NSA circuit. We're growing in purse money all the time, and which is nice, but we're kind of leveled out on where you can go and race. We used to race a lot of the flat tracks used to hold steeplechase races, But because of people watching the fails videos on YouTube, people don't want the PR.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
so that was a big thing when I went to the Gold Cup. Like I said, that was the first time I ever watched steeplechase in person. And I know Ben knows him, and I think you at least know of Cliff Williamson. We've had him on the podcast like 3 or 4 times now. And the first thing I said to Cliff was, man, like all these fields are like finishing. Like they might have like a horse or two drop out, but like everyone's finishing. Like I didn't realize steeplechase was like that. And he's like, yeah, those videos are only on the internet because like half the field finishes. Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
if it bleeds,
talk
it
about
bleeds,
some
whatever.
talk about some bad PR. Because I like our group of friends. Like it was me and 11 other guys. We went there having pretty much all of us never seen steeplechase before, and honestly, in a lot of ways, it's way more entertaining than the flat track races because it's kind of like NASCAR versus Formula One.
Yeah, I can see that, and you can kind of relate to NASCAR, like the last 5 laps. That's when your wrecks happen, and then in steeplechase, since your last 3 fences, everyone starts getting a little faster, trying to win, place their horses in the right spot. So that's when you might get more of your falls. But majority of the time, it's very normal for a whole race day to go by and no one falls off, or no horse falls anyways. Jockeys get popped off a lot sometimes. But horses don't go down. Horses don't go down a whole lot. There's a lot of heat on steeplechasing. So a lot of trainers, they're really putting in the time to make sure that the horses are prepared to go out there and perform without putting themselves in harm's way, because the horses are so natural at it and they're so good at it at that level. You're not, unless it's a fluke accident, these horses you're pretty much out there knowing you're not sending a horse out there that's an iffy jumper. They're going out there that they can do the job. So, but when it does happen, it gets a lot. It's people always want to bitch about something. So, or everyone wants a villain. PETA wants a villain. They're pretty easy. They're pretty easy to get.
I should clarify that too. All those videos that I've seen, I love checking out the handle, like whose channel it is. And a lot of times the channels that are posting that stuff are some real, tree hugger-ish name, like PETA America, or, Save the Horse, or blah, whatever it is. And they've got a little heart and a unicorn in their bio. And same with, like if you look up rodeos, a lot of times you don't get rodeo ride videos, good ones. You get a lot of wrecks. And, one of the other guests we had on here is a equine photographer, Nicole Pollo. And she spends a lot of time down in Nevada, and she'll go to these ranch rodeos where they're doing horse roping, wild horse roping. And they'll be doing all kind of stuff, but they're doing a good job, and they're not hurting anybody. They're having a great time. But they don't like her being around with her camera. And they don't realize she's there to take good photos and showcase the Western world and how awesome it is. But I'm sure, a lot of times most of the people involved in, steeplechase or rodeo or a lot of these events that are pretty fast-paced action events, they're having too much fun to be taking videos of stuff. But the guys that are there with their camera taking videos a lot of times are the activists, and then they're only saving the wreck video and posting it. So it's really a shame. And she had that problem. These guys didn't want her there with her camera because they thought she was there just to take photos of things that went bad, or just take a photo at the wrong time and post it and say, look at this, look what they're doing in Nevada, when they're not hurting anybody. Like the same thing there. You would go to that rodeo after seeing some video and nothing bad would happen. And you'd be like, these guys are doing a great job. There's nothing wrong with this.
And what they also don't, those people who are so quick to post that shit, they probably never taken care of anything in their lives. They don't know what goes, the hours it goes in making those animals perform and stay healthy. No one wants to see a horse get hurt, especially us. We put in so much time and emotional, taxation on ourselves to get these animals to their top physical athletic ability. We're going there to show what we can do with an animal. and show them what that horse can do. That's what we're prideful about. It's a worst day ever when something bad happens to your horse. So I don't know why they think we do it just to hurt horses. That's not the goal at all, is it? Or cat or bulls.
Exactly.
Like I know, I never knew. Speaking of what, it's not a horse, but those bucking bulls. I didn't realize a lot of them are damn tame as hell. They're taken care of hand over foot, and they're like big dogs. They just love to jump in the air. And
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Yeah, like if you've seen photos of
scratch
that
on 'em and
bull,
stuff.
yeah, that bull that ended JB Mooney's career, he bought it.
that's what
And he'll post
that's what
pictures of him out there scratching it like a big puppy dog.
that's what I'm referring to. Exactly,
Yeah,
JB
yeah,
Mooney. Yeah, that's where I saw it. I'm like, that thing is just.
yeah.
And I didn't know that. I mean, I've worked with cattle. My grandfather, who bred racehorses, he also did. He loved Angus cattle. God, I hate a cow so much. Those things run over you. He chasing them all over the place, having to tag them. They run over you. But those aren't animals that are bred to compete. Those are animals to be athletic creatures. Not like a bucking bull, or a roping horse, or steeplechase horse, or show jumper, dressage horse. They're bred to be taken care of and to be produced into something incredible. And that's that's why I love steeplechase racing, because I think it's one of the hardest things to do at the top level. And
Yeah.
you really got to put in your 10,000 hours every damn week, just to get to that kind of result. And that's what draws me to it. You really get a lot. You really test a horse to what its physical limits are, and getting them to the ability to execute that is pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great example of where, the saying, they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions, So you've got a guy who's trying to help an animal do an athletic endeavor, and they're doing a good job, and he's got great nutrition and proper training and all that stuff, and the end product is pretty magnificent. And then some other totally uneducated person goes and rescues some horse out of not even a bad situation, and now he's like this laminitic case with arthritis and other health problems, and they're keeping the thing alive, right? And that horse is in way worse shape, and they think they're doing a good job.
Well, they're
The
overweight.
athlete exactly. I mean, you could name it, right? You've seen that stuff. Go down the list, and we've gone on ad nauseum on here about it, but again, it's not their fault. It is a good intention of theirs, but they don't. It's a lack of education, and there's so much of that in almost every different avenue of life, but especially in this world. And that's why I'm happy asking you questions, because the more I learn, the more, like even the thing with the wrecks. Like I didn't think you guys were out there just tripping horses and having wrecks or anything, but it's still cool to hear why that stuff happens, and how it basically comes back to user error, right? It comes back to, like you said, somebody probably not a good rider. They probably shouldn't be on the horse going over that jump if they're not wanting to go over it themselves. Something in them is
I've
holding
seen it
the horse
plenty of
back
times.
from performing at a level
happen.
that he is trained and able to do.
Yep. I've seen good horses with bad riders on them fall because it's not the horse's fault, it's the rider's rider error. That happens all the time. And not just in steeplechasing. I see it on eventers do it. I see it, show jumpers do it. Sometimes they put a little too much faith. Nowadays, people I don't think, put enough time on their riding themselves. They spend $100,000 on a horse, and they think their riding can just be half-assed, or they ride 3 times a week and think they're doing all right, so they can go compete, put a horse in a bad situation where the horse is being trained every day by someone else, and then they get on and they can't fucking ride a stick horse, and they get themselves hurt, the horse hurt, even worse.
Yeah, so much comes down to lack of education. Another good example is you'll see these reels online of people riding horses, like maybe in a Western setting or like at a campground, like some setting where you have ropes on the ground and tarps and shit going on and kids running around, and something blows up and the horse takes off, the saddle goes under his belly, the guy gets hurt, and the guy holding the camera is laughing with a beer in the other hand. Like the whole scenario's bad. And some random everyday person would see that and be like, ha, 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 that's funny. They got what they deserve. Horses are dangerous. but they think it's funny. And then they would see a horseman in a round pen teaching a horse how to hobble, and they're like, what is that guy doing? Why is he terrorizing that horse, hobbling his feet? Whereas that guy is teaching the horse and preparing him to never get in that situation. Like in our world, in the Western world, like if you're going to take a horse to a branding and you're going to rope on him and be around other people with ropes attached to cows, attached to saddle horns, yeah, you should have exposed your horse to hobbles in a safe environment before you did that. And to the uneducated person, they don't know what you're doing. But if you get educated, you realize that is the safest, most humane thing you can do is expose your horse to something like having his feet hobbled.
Yeah, because first thing a horse is going to do if they don't understand something is take the fuck off. And when a horse, horses are really good at hurting themselves. And when 1,200 pounds goes full tilt because they're scared because they don't know what's going on, that's when they really get hurt. So it's a pain in the ass to get them to where that point is, but you got to do it. It's the best thing for them. Best thing you can do for a horse is teach it manners and teach it a discipline, and then do something with it.
Man, I got to tell you, man, it seems like you really love what you do, but I don't envy anyone who makes a living with off-the-track thoroughbreds.
Man, there's some. I just picked one up last week, and they're not too. They're really, what people don't realize about an off-track thoroughbred is some are rats. No doubt about it. You can get some rats but they're groomed. They're handled every day. They're ridden every day. Sometimes when they're not supposed to, but that's a different story. But they're pretty well handled animals. So I have had very few problems getting a horse off the track, and then I give it about a few days to get acclimated to its new surroundings here, or my boss does at her barn. But you can get right on them, and they don't really give you much problems. So I don't know. I wouldn't go trying to rope off it, but if I need to just get it hacking and riding and learning how to use itself, I don't have too much problems with off-the-track thoroughbreds. They seem to be pretty well exposed to things.
Yeah. I'm just giving the off-the-track horses a hard time. I have an off-the-track mare. She's been off the track about 5 years now, and I have used her in brandings and rope cattle out in the pasture off her. And honestly, it might just be horse specific, but that's one of her favorite things, because when a rope comes tight, in my experience, thoroughbreds, especially off-track thoroughbreds, if you can kind of get them to the place where they can focus, they really like focusing every cell in their body on one job, right?
Yeah.
Like running at a fence, or we are attached to this cow right now. That's kind of when it seems like they almost that's when they're at their peak, versus it's Tuesday morning and we're schooling something or just working on something. They're good, but it seems like they almost embrace that. There's another level of intensity. That's been my experience, and I'm sure it's not every horse, but
no.
I'm
you got a good mare. You got a good mare.
Oh yeah. Well, see, and the one I'm talking about is a mare. She's dialed. But if you want to just sit there and all right, we got to sit here for 20 minutes while they go do something over there, she'll stand, but you can tell I'm not happy about it.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty common. And making the fox hunter, I use thoroughbreds, and getting them to stand is always the hardest part. They got to learn how to take a breath and spit the bit and just relax, cock a leg up. But that's always the hardest thing for me to teach a thoroughbred, how to do, is just to chill out and relax and take it all in, because they always want to be moving, they want to be galloping, they want to be doing something except standing. And that's the easiest thing in the world to do, is just don't do anything. But it's the hardest thing for them to figure out. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what you get when you breed 500 years of flight instinct into them, right?
Yeah. Looking for the fastest flight possible.
Yeah. Just sitting still, that's the freaking dumb idea.
So let's go back to, we were talking about, started out, you were riding as a kid. Obviously, you're born into it. Your whole family did that. And you said you were afraid of riding as a kid, and then obviously you grew out of that.
Yeah.
What led you to do steeplechase? I mean, did you find out that you were an adrenaline junkie, or like, what is it that got you to do that? Because I feel like that's not the most laid back horse sport out there. I mean, that's got to
No,
be
it's not.
right up there with the top.
It's I got into it because of my dad, because my dad did it. So he was my idol growing up. You know, they would always record the races on VCR, and I'd pop it in and watch it all the time on replay. You know, rewind the video, watch it like I never watched it before. I'd call the races, and grew up going to the races, watching it, loved every bit of it. So my dad got me when I turned 16. My dad got me a horse off of a local steeplechase owner and rider, and the horse had actually was trained by the lady I work for now at the time. He wasn't competitive enough to go to the sanction races, so they gave him to me as a point-to-pointer, just like for an amateur hurdle horse. And so I was lucky to have an experienced horse for my first steeplechase horse. And I won my first race on him, and then a week later I broke my first bone, you know, so on the same horse. But I guess and I was and you're always I'm actually not an adrenaline junkie. I think what keeps me doing it is I think I really enjoy, well, first of all, overcoming the fear of doing it. It's not scary, you know. I'm not nervous sitting in the paddock fucking chain smoking beforehand, trying to get my nerves down, or not overthinking it. No, like, let my abilities just naturally take over. But you're always I fell a lot. You call it losing your bottle when you had a lot of falls. And in high school, and I was a teenager, later into my high school years, I had a lot of falls, and I'd actually only ever made it around like one sanctioned race. You know, I won a lot of points, but I had a lot of bad falls, a couple dingers. You know, I rode at Gold Cup in the Steeplethon race, and I fell like 7 fences in, knocked out for like 15 minutes. And that kind of took away any adrenaline seeking behavior for a while. But I do just enjoy, you know, overcoming the adversity, because I consider myself a good rider. I don't consider myself a top jockey by any stretch of the means. It's a whole different game being a jockey than just being a good rider. So I do it because, you know, traditionally it's my family's done it, so I kind of feel like I have a connection with my father still, and I know I can do it. So I kind of just I don't let myself bitch out and say, "Oh, we don't want to fall, do you? Don't do it." Well, that's no fucking way to go about doing anything. So I do it. I don't go to the professionals. You know, I don't go up and do the sanction races anymore, but I still get on and do the point-to-points, get my weight down, and go be competitive. So I enjoy it because I got the horse there. I trained it. I taught it how to jump. I got it fit. I might as well race it too. And when you do get around a course, you know, going fast against other horses, other riders, and you get around, you accomplished your goal. Maybe you didn't win, but you accomplished it, and you got around and you were competitive, and it showed that you belonged there. You didn't make a fool out of yourself or fall, and that's a great feeling. You know, some people don't have much to work towards in life. I always feel that's a lot of problem with some people nowadays. You know, they don't have anything to aim towards. So riding steeplechase, you know, well, and training a horse well, that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. And I don't think I love fox hunting, but that's what I do to relax. It's not something I do to go and be better at. You know, I just enjoy to do it. So steeplechasing, and just with y'all training horses, it's like you know, you're always learning something new. Like, you're not waking up every day saying, "Oh, I know how to train every horse that comes my way." You know, you're always learning something new about a different horse. So that's why I like to do it. You know, and steeplechase racing is I think is the most challenging thing that I can do for what I know, and try to strive to get to where I can be the best at it. Training in many ways. I don't have any goals to be the top jockey in America, but I would have goals to train one of the best steeplechase horses in the country. That's definitely a goal of mine.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you're not riding them, you don't really get a sense of what's going on. So I'll school them up and race them myself, but then when it comes time to go win some money, I'll put an Irishman on them or something.
Did he cut out again?
Yeah, for a second there.
Reconnecting.
He's probably still talking though right now. Yeah. Oh, you cut out for just a second there. That's all right though. But man, when you were mentioning having your father to look to, and you could see he could do it, so you knew you could do it. That reminded me, when I was a kid, it's not horses, but my dad was a handyman, and he did a lot of stuff, and he would go up on 40-foot ladders on roofs all the time. And I was like 5 or 6 years old, and he would get me to come up there with him, and I hated it. I mean, I really thought I was going to die sometimes as a kid, but
I'm terrified.
He would get up there, and he would set it up so it was safe, and he would get me to come to him, and he'd be like, "You'll be all right." He's like, "I'm here. Like, I'm okay. Like, I know you're going to be fine." And I was scared to death, but having him kind of show the way and like seeing that he was all right. And especially when I was on the ground, like looking at the project, it looked safe. It looked like I could do it. But when you're up there, it didn't feel that safe. And I just had to remember what it looked like from the ground. And then also knowing my dad could do it, I was like, well, if I'm ever going to be as good or better than my dad, like I've got to at least do this. And so I could see how that would help to have your dad, if he's doing it, you've kind of got to do it. Like, but it gives you a bridge to get there. But you were saying like you like to overcome stuff just because it is hard. Do you do anything else actively where you see, where you take on something difficult and use that as a source of training for steeplechase, or do you find most of your training comes from doing the sport itself?
Well, one of the most difficult things that I've been taught to by my current boss, I've been riding for her for years, never full time, but she won Rolex back in '94, like the big 3-day event. So she was an eventer before steeplechase trainer, and she rode steeplechase as well. But she's taught me a lot about flat work and grids and learning how to, not quite dressage, but getting a horse to use themselves properly in different ways, bending them and holding leads, small circles. So, and I tell you, when you get a horse that doesn't know how to do that and you got to make it do it for 10 minutes with her yelling at you, I'm dripping in sweat. It's so fucking challenging. I'd rather gallop 20 horses in a row than ride 3 on the flat for 10 minutes, having to when I was learning to do all that. But I saw so much improvement by the way the horse carries themselves, galloping, jumping, stamina, muscles. That was something I never learned growing up with my father. He was more old school. We'd train him gallop up hills, jog him, gallop up hills, go jump. No flat work, no grids. We'd teach him how to jump over logs and coops and then go jump hurdles, which is fine. That works. But learning how to bring along a horse using flat work as well, than just physically training them to race, I found that to be very rewarding, and I don't think I could train a horse without that now. And that was something I was brought into later in my education with horses. So like this horse I just got off the flat track, even though I'm going to train him to be a steeplechaser, I'm going to start him off doing flat work, jumping grids, learning how to do lead changes, just simple education like that, just to make it a more well-rounded horse. And it translates so well when it comes time to perform, because those little, wax on, wax off doesn't seem like it's a big deal at first, but when you're about to get kicked in the head, you wax off, I guess. So it all kind of comes back full circle. Yeah.
That's cool.
But other than that, horses are the only thing I challenge myself with. I'm not I don't do anything else to challenge myself. My day's hard enough. And I was actually I break some horses as well, and I was actually going to pick y'all's brain about something. I'm currently dealing with a 3-year-old thoroughbred, not off the track, never ran or trained. I'm just breaking them, but I'm having a hell of a time getting the thing to move forward. Once I get on its back, I can vault on him and I can lunge him with side reins, and he can go off my commands. And I got on him in the stall, but now that I'm getting on him in the round pen, that son of a gun just freezes up, doesn't move, just stands there with his head, neck stiff, and then if I can't get him to move, he is 10 feet in the air or 10 feet backwards. Was that something that y'all see a lot in your line of work or bringing horses along?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll qualify all of this. This is like a can of worms, man, because this is like I don't know, this would be like, Sam, how do you teach a horse to jump? What is the best way or whatever? And maybe that's a simple answer. Maybe it's not. But like, that's like what we do, right? Is this colt starting deal. But I mean, yeah, man, it's like the crappiest feeling in the world, right?
You don't know which way he's going to go.
Yeah. I always I've got it burned into my brain how it feels on horses when you've done all your groundwork and you're like, all right, and now I'm going to ride you. And you get on and it's like sitting on like a statue horse, right? Like sitting on a horse outside of P.F. Chang's or something, because that moment is when you're like,
here it goes.
Well, I could either get off right now, or if I try to make something happen, there's a pretty good chance that it's all going to come unwound, right? Because it's not the ones like if you get on them and they're like kind of wiggly and they're like ready to move their feet and stuff, you're like, oh, dude, money in the bank, right?
No
Like they're already moving around, and now all I have to do is direct these feet that already want to move. So, yeah, no, I've definitely come across that. I mean, I assume you probably have too, haven't you, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I've broken horses. It's something I can do. It's not something I would say I'm an expert at. Like I broke and started my grandfather's horses. My dad and I bred some, and I break and start them, but it's not. I definitely haven't gotten my 10,000 hours in that field, So
Sure.
It's just like I'm getting very damn frustrated. That damn thing. It's hard, and it's hard to do it when you do it by yourself, because sometimes
that's the other thing. Yep.
And I've got a kid that can lead it for me, and this thing if I can get him in there and get him moving, he'll move with someone leading him. But then when he goes away, he just goes back to standing like a statue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say one thing we do a lot, just kind of in how Ben and I've been taught to start horses, is like flagging horses in a round pen. Basically they're loose in a round pen, flagging them. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying you should go and do this, because I don't want you to get killed. But one thing that it's almost like a cheat code, right, on horses like that. Like if you've got someone you really trust and you've already flagged that horse a little bit to where they'll go around the round pen, like if you can saddle them and get on them, like it's got to be two people who trust each other. But one person, you just sit there and you're just a passenger, and the other person flags them around. And then over time, it's kind of like that person like is your crop, if that makes sense. So It's like maybe you work your legs a little bit, and if the horse doesn't go, they're like, all right, I come in. But again, you got to have a person you trust to have that good timing, right?
Right, yeah.
Because if you hit a horse with the crop at the wrong time, then, as you know, they can blow up. So I'm not saying that's what you should go do. I'm just saying that's what I would do if that horse was like.
It's an idea that I did not have before this, so I'll take it.
Yeah. No, I think that is a good idea, what Joe said. And you might still get to the point where you're trying to transition between having somebody flag you and the horse listening to you. But, so you mentioned a minute ago, wax on, wax off. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like, you say, I got all my groundwork done, and then I get on him and I can't get him to go. I would think, your groundwork just still needs some help, and think more about not getting done a finite list of things on the ground, but making sure that the things you're getting done on the ground are causing the horse to search a little bit and try to make a change. So then when you're in the saddle, I'm sure you're doing something to try to get him to go. Instead of him standing there like a statue, he'll be searching, So if on the ground, you might get some things done. But if it's just becoming a little routine that he knows pretty well, then you might try some things like Joe said, flag him around or try to use just your lead rope to move his feet or, do some more things and get him used to searching on the ground. And then even if you have someone flagging you around and you're in the saddle, make that kind of interesting for him. And then when you're up there in the saddle, whether you're banging him with your legs or you get a rope around his butt or you're carrying a flag yourself or you're just using your mouth or I don't know, just whatever you're doing, he'll start searching because he's like, man, this guy is doing something weird. I'm supposed to try something, and I'm supposed to try something with my feet. You're not trying to make him all pretty. You're teaching him to search and do something with his feet. And if he's in a habit of doing that, even those horses that get locked up, they'll start searching. And you might still need that guy on the ground with the flag.
I understand that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Because that's the biggest thing about those horses is, they don't want to blow up, right? And they don't want you, using a crop or kicking them in the belly or being flagged or whatever. They just haven't worked out that aid means move your feet. Right. And then it's like you add pressure, and then it all erupts. Right. So, yeah, like Ben said, they've just got to kind of learn to search to connect what you're doing on their back to mean go forward. And some horses, like a lot of thoroughbreds are really easy to start because, like you just talked about, their answer to everything is, why don't I just move my feet
forward?
Right.
I got the one that doesn't.
Horses like that. You can start.
Yeah, and like Joe just said, that's exactly right. If they're not, if you have them going around pretty well on the ground and all you're changing is you're in the saddle now, maybe how you're asking them to go forward is very different than how you're asking them to go on the ground. And so another thing you could do is even use your stirrup and bang him on his side and get him to move forward just one step at a time. And you get him searching. And it's amazing. You get in the saddle and all of a sudden your leg starts moving a little bit and it's a totally different reaction because they're like, oh, yeah. And maybe you just use one leg, use your inside leg a little bit, not both of them. And and he goes, maybe I ought to try going forward like he showed me on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, I do a lot of that with colts too. Obviously, I'm starting them in a Western saddle with a big stirrup and a big fender. But like I'll be holding the horse and then I'll just bump them right where my leg would touch them. But I'll just like hold the stirrup and bump them. And I'll sit there and bump them until their feet move.
Yeah.
And then I'll just get them to where whenever they feel like just a little energy in that stirrup, they start moving their feet. And that seems to translate pretty well too.
Yeah. Okay, I'll try that.
But the moral of the story is he just doesn't realize that the way to get out of the like little predicament you're putting him in by kicking him or hitting him on the butt or whatever, he doesn't realize the way to get out of that predicament is just move your feet. And so he like sits there. It's like someone who maybe doesn't have like can't like keep it together very well, right? Like they don't know how to solve a problem in life, and it's like they just don't do anything, and then they just have a meltdown. Like that's what horses that can't move and then buck do.
Yeah.
Like he hasn't been taught like, oh, you can get yourself out of this problem. So
right.
Anyway, that's Ben and Joe's little horse training symposium there.
Good. I figured I get some advice out of it.
And before you try any of that stuff, Sean, let me send you I'm going to email you a waiver and send that back to me.
Don't send me a bill.
The most important part of all of this. So also this is my fault. Ben's not being rude. My phone autocorrected your name to Sean earlier today when I texted Ben. But his name is Sam, not Sean, Ben.
Oh, I don't know if I got your second text. Sam.
Okay.
Yeah, so Sam, especially if you're going to sign that waiver, I'll make sure to get your name right on that thing.
Yeah, but the most important part of this whole deal, and I'm dead serious about this, is make sure you record all of it so we can put it on the move Instagram and put like this audio
before and after.
Yeah,
I'll have the kid record it.
Yeah, make sure. Yeah, you can get them to help you flag you, but definitely make sure they're recording on the phone or whatever.
We'll make sure it won't be a fail video first. Put
Yeah,
that on
right.
YouTube.
Yeah, we don't need any more like steeplechase trainer harasses horse.
Plenty of
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Oh, so a question I had for you, and we kind of talked about it a little bit. Obviously, you've got aspirations of being a trainer, but you do have experience racing, and since you're in the world, I assume you're like familiar with jockeys and stuff. Um, Man, can you talk just a little bit about what that's like, um, being a steeplechase jockey or just a jockey of any kind? Because I don't know a ton about it. Everything I've seen, to me, the closest thing would be like guys that are boxers or something like that, where it's like they're competitive. Um, you know, and there's like this craft to it, but then there's an element of fitness, and there's typically like a big team around you. It's not just you, even though it like on paper might be like an individual sport. Um, but yeah, can you talk a little bit more? And my other question is, you were talking about getting your weight down. Like, what size are you, and is there like an optimum like steeplechase size? And is that like
Yeah.
the same as the flat tracks, or like how does that all work?
Yeah, so flat track racing, they're little guys. They're got to tack like 120 pounds or something like that. Steeplechase racing is I'm 5'10".
Okay.
I walk around at about 170 pounds. So for the lightest weights, you kind of go out on averaging it. You're probably gonna tack 155 with your saddle and your gear that's on you, like your vest and your boots and your silks on your vest. So with all your tack, you got to weigh about 155 for hurdle racing. And then for timber, which is what I predominantly do now because I'm bigger, I don't really do the hurdle racing anymore. You tack about 165. So you got to weigh 165. Oh, shit. You hear me?
Yeah,
We missed a little bit of that,
Oh,
though,
yeah.
or at least
So,
I did.
Yeah.
so you
You're
tack
talking about weighing 155 for hurdle racing.
Right. Yeah. So with your gear, you got to weigh 155. Minus any handicapping that's going on. If you're on a mare, you might have to carry less. If you're on a maiden, you might have to carry less. Maiden is a horse that hasn't won a race. But 155 is primarily the average weight. And then for timber racing, the weights is 165 pounds with your gear. So I try to get down to like soaking wet. I try to get down to if I can get down to 155, I'm doing pretty good. I can make weight for my timber racing, but realistically, I kind of stall out at 158, 159, but I can still usually tack 165. But like I said,
What
I'm
does that
running.
process look like? I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah,
But
no, you're
like
good.
you
It's different for
getting weight.
everyone's got different, habits. Diets have gotten really good these days. In high school, it was just don't eat. My dad would hear me sneaking pieces of bread in the middle of the night. And, but it was like in high school, I had no guidance on it. My dad, when he did it, he just drank Guinness and ate peanuts. That was his fucking diet.
Oh man,
Yeah. He
Dang.
functioned fine on that.
that's a man right there.
Yeah, he was a different cut. But that's what all the boys used to do back then. They would just go out and drink and just don't eat. They'd say, quit the eating, not the drinking. And but nowadays, jockey's a little more professional. Exercise. I do intermittent fasting. That works. That works great for me. I just do like a lean protein at night. I can't go to bed hungry. That's just not going to happen. So I don't need to eat all day. I hate eating lunch, especially if I'm working. So it makes me tired, and I'm kind of a glutton, so it's hard for me to like have a healthy, lean lunch. It's just not going to work. So do like a steak at night, lean steak or bacon and eggs, no carbs, but it's a healthy meal. You get all your body's got everything it needs in it, and I have an elliptical that I get on after I work all day, and then go 20, 30 minutes on that. And then like the day before, you sweat, get in a sweatsuit, get in the sauna, go for a run or a walk, get the last couple of pounds off. But if you maintain a healthy diet, weight stays off. You just don't eat fucking McDonald's. It's not too hard. You just got to rationalize what you eat.
So are you saying you stay at 170 sometimes and then you go down to your like 158 or so and then shave off from there? Like, what's the time period between going from 170 to 155?
I do it in about a month.
Jeez.
Yeah, but I'll start my diet probably 2 months out, just like slowly lightening what I have for dinner just to get my body used to it. So I'm not like driving myself crazy. But yeah, I procrastinate too. So about a month, I start thinking about it. A month out, I start. But it's 20 pounds. It's the first 10 pounds is easy. It's the last 10 pounds that really sucks. So
wow.
But if you
not to get like all personal or anything, but when you're 170, what's your diet then? Do you start eating 3 meals a day, 2 meals a day, or adding stuff in, not just protein?
I just have more unhealthy dinners. That's about it.
Okay.
I go out. I'll just go out and eat more. I hate cooking, so I go out to eat a lot at home. But when I'm on my diet, I cook at home, so I just rationalize what I eat. But when I go out for dinner, I'm going to have a soup, a salad, an appetizer, and then dinner. So which is not usually healthy. It's going to be pasta or pizza or Chinese food.
All the good stuff.
All the good stuff.
Yeah, because you and I are about the same size. I might be like a half inch taller, but I typically walk around 175, except for I already eat kind of like an animal-based diet, and I eat sometimes lunch and mostly just dinner. And that's about as lean as I can get. I mean, I was 180. When we tested cows a month ago, I hopped in the cow chute to test the weight, and I was 180.
I mean, there are days, I'm not going to lie, there are days you're not going to be
I would have to do something. If I was going to do that, I would have to
you might,
go in a sauna with an elliptical every day, all day. He's probably talking right now.
There it is. Sorry. There are days, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. So there are going to be days where you're just not going to eat anything. You might just have an egg, Yep. Like to start getting real lean and getting on the elliptical. So if you're working all day, burning calories, working, and you might say, oh, well, that's enough to stay fit and not fat as a human. But then you got to get on the elliptical for an hour sometimes or 45 minutes and sweat. And that's how you start losing that poundage that you can't usually get rid of. That's how you get really lean. And you have to go burn 500 calories while you may have only consumed 200 that day. You just got to. You just got to push it out a little bit. But, if there's enough, you take vitamins, make sure you're eating a lot of protein, lean protein to have enough energy, then a lot of damn coffee, really. I'm not saying it's the best athletic diet in the world, but that's how I lose weight anyways. And but a lot of jockeys, a lot of them, they're 5'8", 5'9". Hell, I had a buddy, who's 6'4", and rode timber races.
Holy crap!
You don't want to know what he did. It was tough.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, that was brutal.
So my mother, before me, I think back in the 80s, she lived in Maryland, and she was a professional steeplechase jockey.
Oh yeah,
I'm not exactly sure. What'd you say?
What was her name?
Teresa Little was her maiden name.
I don't know her.
Yeah.
I might know her.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't around. This is just what I've been told, right? But she's like, I don't know, she was like 5'2", maybe. But anyway, I thought it was the coolest thing ever that she was a steeplechase jockey. So
she would have had to carry lead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So she had a lead pad.
Growing up in our basement, she still had all the saddle pads with like the pockets and stuff.
For the lead, yeah.
With the lead. I thought those were what we would do. We would like go on trail rides and like I'd like keep my snacks in those like saddle pads with like the lead pockets.
Yeah, they're handy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And but you were also asking me about what the jockeys are like. or what it's like being a jockey?
Yeah. So is it okay? Like, if we're, um, is it one of those things where there's like a real camaraderie, like among all the jockeys, or like what's the because obviously they're competitive. Like, if you're gonna do
Yeah,
something like that, you gotta
they're
want to win.
they're
But how
all
does that
very competitive.
balance out?
They're all very competitive, and there's a lot of fighting and like arguing going on in the jockeys room. They're always
Good.
claiming fouls on each other, but it's there. Not too many grudges are held, but they can be pretty salty to each other, for a couple weeks afterwards.
Yeah.
I mean, no one's going out there to hurt anybody. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there are some ways you might be able to take someone out that if you know what you're doing, but no one's really doing that these days. When my dad was racing, they didn't like someone, they'd put them through a wing or some shit like that, or take their
Jeez.
bridle off, even like
Yeah.
just like go fuck yourself.
So,
But
so I don't know if you watch basketball at all, but there's like that narrative out there in the NBA that there was like, I don't know, the good old days, quote unquote, with like Michael Jordan and Larry Bird and
yeah, more
all these
physical
guys.
basketball.
Yeah, well, and they didn't like each other, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, I heard that they hate each
Respected
other.
each
Yeah,
other. Yeah, but now that like everyone's so professional and the salaries are so high, it's like, yeah, they're playing in the playoffs right now, but a month from now they're all going to be in some island in the Mediterranean together, like, even though they're all on
yeah.
different teams, right? So like that, I guess that was kind of what I was getting at. Was it, um, you know, I like the idea of them having that camaraderie, but it sounds like there's still some like real competitive, like, no, I don't like that guy. Like, I'm going to get up
There's a
half
lot
an
of
hour earlier because I'm thinking about that guy who like beat me last week or something like
yeah.
that.
There's. I mean, not they all don't get along. Trust me. Uh, they.
See, but I almost like that better. Not that I want people to argue, but like
I'm pretty
I like
happy to
that
know that my
narrative.
jockey. That I'm pretty happy to know that like, my jockey hates the other jockey on the favorite horse in the race. He's going to try a little harder to win.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
yeah. I'm not that. I am not that competitive. So that's one thing that's always held me back from being a very like good jockey. I just never had that drive to like send one down to the last like 100 miles an hour head to head. Like I'm just going to sit chilly and just get over the last and then run. And these guys, they're so comfortable on a horse. They're it's what they can do. Being a good jockey might not necessarily make you a good horseman, but when you're a good jockey, it really pays off when it comes time to win a race. And these guys, what they can do with a horse and is pretty impressive. And it's like you were asking, like there's not really a team base around you. It's you by yourself. You're not unless you're a jockey that's being paid to be the stable jockey for a big operation. You might just go and gallop a couple horses a week for someone, but on race day, you're your own contractor, and you get paid to ride per horse. And if you fuck up, which they do, you got to hear about it because I've had jockeys screw me in a race because they made the wrong call. They're human, they're human, but at the top level, you're a professional jockey and you're a professional athlete. And I'm picking you to do your job on my horse that I've spent every day, all year, getting ready for this day. And you got a few minutes. You might talk to them leading up to the race all week, talking about what your plan is for your horse, how you want the horse to be ridden in that race. If you want him to go out front, if you want him to be tucked in the middle or out the back. And sometimes that can't happen. Because when the flag is dropped and the horses go, your whole plan can go out the window in 3 strides, depending how quick the pace is or how slow the pace is. And the jockey's got to be able to adapt. He's got to go 2 miles, sometimes 3, sometimes 4. So that jockey's got to be comfortable enough on this huge animal jumping big fences to know what he's got underneath of him if he's got enough horse to make a run for the finish, or if he doesn't have enough horse, I want my jockey to also know if my horse is tired, you pull him up. You can't. Don't be searching. Don't be trying to win 5th place. If my horse is dead tired, if you're not in the race, he's got to make that decision to pull the horse up for the safety of the horse. So the jockey has got a lot of responsibility, not only to perform as an athlete and a good jockey, but also to keep that horse safe. Because some jockeys, their ego gets ahead. They might be in 3rd place thinking they're sitting on a winner, but if they feel the horse took a bad fence 2 out and they're going full clip, got 2 more fences left, and maybe you're in 3rd, but you're not getting anywhere near 2nd or 1st. Sometimes it's best to not try to jump those last 2 fences. Save it for another day. And that's a hard call to make. Sometimes a trainer might say, thank you, that was a right decision. Sometimes they might say, what the hell was your problem? You were in 3rd place. Why didn't you finish? So a lot of that goes on. And it's a lot people don't think about. So the jockey, it's a pretty lonely job being a jockey, to say the least. If you're doing it professionally and picking up rides for other people, I know jockey, a lot of the time the jockey's never even sat on the horse before he rides it, before he races the damn thing.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah. I did that once and I broke my shoulder.
Dude, that sounds like the most, I'm a little looky about just hopping on horses anymore. Now that I know everything that I know, without like checking them out first. But I can't imagine just like rocking up, never seeing a horse before, and be like, yep, we're going to go in this steeplechase race. Like, that is so much trust you're putting in an animal. You do not know anything.
It's a tight enough community, though. Like, all the jockeys are watching all the races. So if it's like a good horse that maybe its jockey got hurt in the race before, and that like a really nice horse needs a jockey, and you have an opening to ride in that race, you pick up that ride because it's a good horse and it's a good trainer. Yeah, it would have been better to maybe have sat on it once, but a good horse rides like a good horse in a steeplechase race. You stick to your basics of not getting in the horse. You're a professional jockey. These guys can ride. They can, once they jump 2 or 3 fences, they've got a horse figured out pretty much.
Yeah. It was interesting what you said, like being a good horseman and being a good jockey are kind of 2 different things. Because we've had people on this show talk about like horse showing. Like a guy we've had on here is a guy by the name of Joe Walter, who in the early 2000s, I believe, had a pretty successful show career in Texas. He like won the first ever AQHA Versatility Championship and stuff like that. But he was, before that, like a colt starter and a ranch cowboy and all this stuff. And we got into the show world. They told him, like, oh, you're not going to win anything starting off. He's like, why? He's like, because you're just way too good a horseman. Like, you're just going to be feeling like, oh, that didn't feel quite right. Or, oh, I need to fix that up. And he said, there's a reason the engineers don't drive the race cars. Like, there's a different mentality of like, no, I need to go do this thing right now versus looking at the whole picture, like, creating this animal in terms of like their education, right?
Yeah, you're completely right. And like as a trainer, it's hard for me to win a steeplechase race. The jockey's got to push that horse to 100%. You're opening up the throttle. It's one that's scary to do. Second of all, if you train the horse every day yourself and you have a connection with that horse, you might be afraid to pull that trigger to say, we got to go, bud. Like, it's time to win a race. And you might not be able to commit to that 100% of full athletic, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, just say, kick the tires and light the fires. We got to go. And a jockey doesn't have that emotional connection, kind of with the horse. So he won't be afraid to push him to his limits, where I myself have found myself a little too timid. Even though I know the horse is fit, it's ready to go, I don't want to push it to its peak because I'm thinking too much about the horse I've been training the whole time. So that can get in the way of, being a good jockey and being a good horseman. And sometimes you got to take yourself out. That's kind of why I take myself out of the equation when it comes time to go to sanction races. Like I'm not the best jockey, so I'm not going to put all this time in all year getting a horse fit to put someone who's only going to commit 85% on race day, which would be myself. Because I probably am not. I'm too emotionally attached, I guess, maybe to. May take a risk. I don't know, something like that. But where professional jockeys, they're there to win races, and they'll get the most out of that horse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I didn't realize the whole deal of them kind of being like a hired gun, though. I think that's accurate when you say that sounds like a lonely existence. Because oh man, you could be out there on an island if you screw up bad enough.
Yeah. There are a couple guys that are contracted to ride for big trainers, so that they're their main jockey, and so they have a good rapport and good relationship with that trainer, and they probably ride that horse every day because they probably have a job exercising those horses too. But there's a lot of journeymen who don't have those contracts and just pick up rides between 3 different trainers that they usually get rides from.
Yeah.
But sometimes, you'll get a call about riding a horse from a small trainer that might be a POS, and sometimes you got to learn to say no, though.
Yeah. It's probably not an easy lesson to learn in the beginning.
No.
Yeah. So this is switching gears a little bit, but I did want to hit on it before we wrap up because you mentioned it at the beginning. And even before we started recording, you talked about it a little bit. One thing you said you looked for was kind of your like a bigger boned thoroughbred, right? And like to some people listening, that might even sound like an oxymoron, right? Like, what do you mean big boned thoroughbred? Because they've got this kind of stereotype of bad feet and not enough bone on the lower leg and things like that. But you were telling me some of these timber horses, they'll race up to like 15 years old.
The best timber horses in this country right now are 14 and 15. They're both 14 and 15 years old. Mystic Strike and Scudic. And
I remember Mystic Strike. I remember watching that horse.
Yep. And he's 14 or 15. He just ran second yesterday up in Pennsylvania. Okay. So those horses, they have good conformation that helps them stay sound. You look for that. You don't want long pasterns. You don't want too straight of a hawk. All the things that most people look for in a well-built horse, we look for in steeplechase horses. Good shoulder, feet, and it's really hard to find a thoroughbred with good feet. But the bone is. I can see horses that come in that are nice flat track horses. People try to make into steeplechase horses, and you can just kind of tell that the bone structure isn't there to keep up with the demand of this sport.
Is that just because of the higher impact?
Yeah,
jumping. Okay.
Mm-hmm. High impact and just what kind of muscle it'll carry as well. We go up and down hills in steeplechase. It's not flat either.
Sure. Okay.
And then, they got to be able to push off the ground. They got to carry heavier weights than they do on the flat track. So now there's always, and I've always said the best steeplechase horses look like good steeplechase horses. That's just it. They're all big. Some can be small, but they're big barreled. If they're not tall, big strapping horses, they're probably big barreled. Got a good lung on them, really big shoulder. Kind of like a tank. That would make up for the height thing. So you look for really good barreled horses. Got a bigger lung capacity, bigger shoulder. You're kind of looking for a tight end is the best way to put it. Kind of like a J.J. Watt, I guess. A fast J.J. Watt is what you're looking for. Is best way to put it.
I see that. Yeah.
Because so that's, but what I do I jog a lot of dirt roads with my horses. You know, put steel shoes on them, and I go jog roads because that tightens up their tendons. You want their tendons to be strong. They've been running on dirt their whole life. You know, their tendons might be a bit compromised. If you don't want to go straight run on hard turf, in America, the ground over here is pretty hard. You know, it's not as soft as dirt, so you're not always going to be running on wet days. So I do a lot of jogging roads to tighten up the tendons for concussions, to help them maintain soundness throughout their training. So that's like something we do to help for a horse to sustain soundness over a long period of time. You don't want to be training them only on dirt and good ground because that's not going to build a tough horse. They got to be tough.
So these are like compacted dirt, like backcountry road type things.
Yeah. So gravel roads. Ben, you said you grew up in Nova. Do you remember any dirt roads or like in Hillsboro?
Oh yeah. There's tons of gravel roads there,
So
like back roads.
Yeah. So that's what we would jog down.
Okay.
We don't I'm not galloping down them, but you know, slow jogs. Yeah, slow jogs. You know, just to tighten up the legs. I'm trying to make those as cold and hard as possible. So like this horse I just got off the track, he's perfectly sound, but I'm going to jog him roads for a couple weeks on and off the roads just so I can tighten up those tendons best I can before I start galloping on hard turf surfaces, especially going in the summertime. It's going to be dry. I'm not going to be able to gallop all the time, but if I can canter and trot on hard turf, you're pretty much jogging on a hard gravel road.
Yeah.
So,
do you guys use like ice or compression or anything like that in the recovery process for these horses?
Yeah. So after if we do like a heavy, what we call it a work day. Like you're letting them really open up the lungs, really stretching them out, pushing them to give their lungs a good blowout. We'll do poultice. We'll ice them first, ice boots, then poultice. Cold hose, something along those lines. But I don't do that after every exercise. If I'm just jogging or doing a light canter, I'm not going to poultice them every day. You know, I feel like, you know, the body I feel like has to learn how to rehabilitate itself at some point. You know, you can't just be throwing ice on it every day. You know,
yeah, that makes sense. I'm always curious about that process. Because I know I've played a little bit of polo cross and a little bit of polo and stuff, and that was a big deal after matches, was just getting everything iced and poulticed. But obviously that's after like a hard performance, right? So
right. And so, but after a race, you know, they're getting ice boots, poultice, and cold hosed after a race, and all cold water poured on them. You know, we're always making sure the horses are getting cooled down as quickly as possible after a steeplechase race, especially when you get closer to May in the hotter months. And a lot of feet packing, especially when the ground gets hard. I'll pack their feet when I feel like they're getting a little tender. I do a lot of turpentine for their feet, keep those soles tight and hard. I feel like that's a pretty good way to avoid abscesses. I feel like you're always getting an abscess a month before they run. You know, and shit like that.
Especially in the springtime. It's just a lot of wet and hard, back and forth. Yeah, so, that makes sense.
But but going back to the big bone, it's hard to come by. It's thoroughbreds.
Oh yeah.
But exactly. They're out there. I mean, you're not always going to get exactly what you're looking for, but you know, size matters sometimes.
Yeah. I feel like thoroughbreds and quarter horses are the same way. They're just such popular breeds that it's almost, from a breeding perspective, it's almost become a volume game, right? I mean, thoroughbreds is 100% a volume game because, like you said, they're like, we'll put it in a couple months of training. If we get a check, great. If not, we'll kind of move it on down the road, right? So it's like anytime there's going to be a volume game with your breeding program, you are going to reach the highest highs. Like, you're going to have these really nice, like, amazing, like, animal athletes, but you are going to end up with a lot of dinks too. And, you know, someone like you in your position, part of the job is sorting through what's the upper echelon of what you're looking for, and you got to sort through a lot of stuff to find that. A lot of times, I feel like
you do. You sure do. It's never exact science either. And I was going to say something about the quarter horses and thoroughbreds. Is damn, I just lost my train of thought.
That's all right.
Cool. Well, yeah. So as far as going forward, I know you said you're working for a trainer now. Do you have aspirations to like have your own barn one day, or like, is there a particular race or anything you'd like to win one day, something like that?
I'd love to win the Virginia Gold Cup. That'd be nice. The Maryland Hunt Cup. I'm a big fan of timber racing. I feel like there's just more longevity. So I brought along my grandfather and I bought a yearling years back. He was 5 this year, and I ran him over. He ran on the flat, didn't do that great. I liked him, so I kept him. Ran him over hurdles. Not that great over hurdles. Showed a lot of potential, but just wasn't fitting the bill. So then I ran him over timber, and he took to it, and we won a couple races this spring in the point-to-points. And I had aspirations to make him into my potential Gold Cup horse, but then a bigger trainer came knocking and offered me a pretty good amount of money for him, so I had to let him go. But it's just kind of, you're always trying to get there, then you're starting over again. So
yeah,
I enjoy working for my trainer now, and it's a paycheck. Like I said, it's hard to make a living in this game. So I would like to have, I try to keep 1 or 2 training of my own on the side. She gives me the time to do that, which is nice of her, my boss. But still got plenty to learn, so I'm happy to keep learning as I go. Surely don't know everything yet, but if I can get a barn of, like, the dream would be to have a barn of 10 to 15 horses, something like that, grow from there. I might have to dip into flat racing a little bit to subsidize this, but if I could get a barn full of steeplechasers, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Do you regret selling that horse? And have you followed its career? Has it done well?
Yeah, he came. So I just sold him like a month ago, and he just ran up in Pennsylvania. He came 3rd, and he a really good 3rd. He's a young timber horse. Like it was. I planned on him being a really good timber horse by the time he was 8. Run him lightly, and so he ran 3rd against some pretty tough competition in a sanction race, and owners were happy. Very nice people who bought him, so I'm happy where he went. So I am, you're always going to be a little bittersweet because as a trainer, you want the glory, but at the same time, I make minimum wage.
Yeah. Because that's an interesting, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to many of our episodes, but we interviewed Nick Dowers, and he's a rein cow horse guy, and he's a $1 million earner, done quite well for himself, and kind of reinvested in himself and been quite smart, in the horse business. He's not flashy, but he's pretty successful. But one of the stories he told us was that early on he had this, well, he still has the stud, but it's named Time for the Diamond. And he was offered quite a bit of money. I think he was offered maybe $90,000, something like that, for this stud. And he was tempted to take it, but he didn't. And he kept it because that was his dream horse. That was the one he had a lot of faith in, and planned on becoming Nick Dowers, the rein cow horse guy and and he ended up being very successful with that horse. And when we were asking him about his career, he said that was one of the kind of pivotal moments for him, was keeping that horse and not selling it to some other trainer, but kind of just biting it and maybe not doing as well financially in the moment, but keeping that horse and then going on and winning on that horse. And when you said that, that's what made me think of it. And I just wondered if you had, if you were trying to be, if you wanted to win, at some point, I guess there's going to be a horse that'll come along that you'll have to stick by and not sell it to somebody, right?
Yeah.
No, I don't want to do that to you, but
Jesus Christ. Fucking open that bottle of bourbon real quick. Just
Real talk, bro.
Oh,
Hey, look, we could do a podcast about Ben, and I could tell you all kinds of stupid things that I've been doing for the last, 15 years since I was like old enough to make a few of my own decisions. So
And
I wasn't saying that.
No, I know. And like my father had, my grandfather had bred some nice horses in the past, and then sold them to bigger trainers or owners, and then they gone off to win. Actually, one back in '98 or 2001, a horse called Iron Fist that my mother bred, my father raced. They sold him, and he went off to win the Virginia Gold Cup. And then another horse they bred, trained and sold. He went off to win a horse called Solo Lord. Went off to win the Maryland Hunt Cup. So, it sucks that you're not the ones that get the horse to that spot, but it's good business because people in the community know where the horse came from at least. So, and they did. I'm kind of happy that the horse 6 months ago wasn't worth a fucking dime. So people did get to see him grow with me and get to see him succeed now with a bigger trainer. So there is a lot of silver linings in it. It's good business. It's not good for probably my resume future career, but I always said, my dad would always tell me the horse could break his leg tomorrow as well, then you got a broken leg.
You absolutely hear that. Especially cattle guys love to say that. If you don't have them, you can't lose them. So that day they're all in the truck leaving is a good day. Not just because you got paid, but because the liability just went way down.
Way down. I try not to get too sentimental.
Yeah, I was gonna say my grandfather always had a saying that the best time to sell a horse was when you had a buyer.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I didn't even know the horse was for sale until the guy called me. I wasn't trying to actively sell him. I was pretty content on just doing then what your guy did himself, and then but when they came calling, I don't look a gift horse in the mouth, right? So went that direction.
Yeah, I mean that's a tough decision to make, man. So recently I read Arnold's autobiography. I saw it in the bookstore or something, and I was like, oh, that looks cool. I'm going to read that. Because I'd heard a lot of things about Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I thought that'd be a neat little case study. And one of the stories he had was when he was starting out, he had just won a couple of big bodybuilding competitions, but he wasn't acting at all. But he knew what he wanted to do, though. He wanted to be an actor and do, like, big American movies, and he wanted to be a bodybuilder, and he wanted to, like, just basically live the American dream, and those were two of the big things he wanted to do. And so he's winning some bodybuilding competitions, and a supplement company came to him, and this was in the early 80s, I believe. And they said, hey, we'll pay you $250,000, and you can be our sponsor, and that'll be your salary per year. And at the time, he said he was maybe making $50,000 a year. And he turned them down. And I was like, holy cow. And he said because he recognized he was going to be the face of that supplement company, and he wouldn't be, the Schwarzenegger that we know today on the cover of a movie. And he could already see his name on that movie cover. But, man, to know in the moment that was the right decision, because I've heard the opposite story, right? I've heard the story where you're like, yep, I made this horse and I sold him to so-and-so and I did this and I did that. And that might be where a little luck plays into the whole game. But that story's interesting to me as well, because to know in the moment, like, no, I'm going to turn down $250,000 a year in the early 80s. And just because I don't want my name to be associated with that company. Wasn't even a bad company. But he's like, I don't want to be the whey protein guy. I want to be the action star. And he wasn't even acting yet, which is crazy. He hadn't even talked to the movie company yet.
Probably can barely speak English.
Talk about some balls on that guy, But
I think he's got some
regardless of what people think about him, I thought that was a cool story. Yeah, I'll say so. Anyway, I like talking about stuff like that because I know I've done some dumb stuff, and I look back and I'm like, man, I could have done this and that, and then I'd be here. But then I wouldn't have learned all the things that I've learned up till now, which isn't that much, by the way. But it's I'm glad I learned it at least. And just the other day, something stupid happened where I'd planned everything to go a certain way, and it totally failed. And I was really pissed, like right up until the end of that day. I think I went to bed kind of pissed. But the next day, like that failed. And the next day I realized how perfect it was. Like it all worked out. Like it was better for me. It was better for me that what I thought was supposed to happen didn't work out. So I don't know, man. But I still think it's cool to talk about because I'm kind of in the same boat. I've got a little horse right now. And I always thought, yeah, you're always looking at a horse. I'm kind of like you. Like I love horses a lot. But I try to not get too attached because I want to always make sure I can sell a horse if I need to or if they die. Like I don't want a horse to be the thing that like makes or breaks me. Like I want to love them and it's part of my life, but I got to be a little independent from my feelings if you're going to be in the horse industry. And so I've got this little horse and I think about it all the time. Like, am I going to keep him? Am I going to show him a little bit? Are my kids going to ride him someday? Am I going to sell him to a little old lady because I'll make him really safe? Like, I don't know yet, but I think about it all the time because I like him. It's a good horse.
Those options, those options all those options you just mentioned are, you're kind of why people are into horses. There's so many possibilities you can do with one animal. And all those options weren't bad ones. They were all great things that you could do with one animal. If you didn't have the horse, you wouldn't have any of those opportunities. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Well, and it's like all opportunity cost, right? Because it's like, how do you know, is this the horse that gives me my big break? Or is this the horse that gives me the financial opportunity to have my big break 18 months from now?
Yeah.
Right? And it's one of those things where I feel like it's always building, but
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, like you said, having options is good. And I do think about all those things, but at the end of the day, I come back and I weigh it against what I want to do. I just weigh it against like what is my goal? Or what are my top 2 or top 3 big things I really want to do? And then where does that horse fit into it? And then I have some peace about, what I'm going to do with him or what I'm going to do with, how I want to train horses, whatever it is. Just kind of like having options is a good thing. I'm coming to realize that. And then you can take those options and then look at your goals and go, okay, compared to those goals, option 1, 2, and 3 aren't great, and option 4, I'm going to run with that one because that's, at least in my limited understanding, the most positioned to get me to my goal. But man, that's a struggle just to get to where you're aware of that. Implementing it's a whole nother story.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to think about, that's for sure. And like I said, hindsight's a pain in the ass, and it's always 20/20. But if you don't make the bad decisions, then you'll never make the good ones in the future either. So you got to take them both, I guess. Yeah. And when they say without bad luck, you'd have no luck at all. So
yeah,
right. But you know what's cool, man, is that like you're like in the game. You're not like, I don't know. You don't like work at Kmart and be like, man, one day I could do something with steeplechase. Like you're playing the game, right? Like maybe you don't make not every decision's the right decision, but you're like in it. You're doing it.
Yeah, I'm living my dream. I'm very fortunate to have the opportunity to, but it's because I stuck with riding and did it all. I never gave it up and I kept going with it. And I didn't really worry about, having a 9-to-5 job with securities. I was happy to take the risk doing this as a living. But when you get the money, you put it away because you have to think about the future. So yeah, I get to wake up and do what I love, but there's no pension plan. There's no retirement fund. There's not a whole lot to go if it doesn't work out, but I'm in it. That's what being in it is. It's why Ben's driving fucking Wyoming next week.
Pretty much. That's what this show's all about. On the move is all about, being on the journey, and that's really where you find enjoyment. It's not in finding the end. But I heard a good summary of all that the other day. Someone was talking to Jordan Peterson, and they're going back and forth about whether or not you should live in the moment or you should plan for the future. And Jordan listens and he's listening, and I'm like, yeah, now I really want to hear Jordan's answer because he's a pretty brainy guy, And Jordan just goes, well, yeah. No, that sounds good. All in all, I would say enjoy the moment, and in everything you do, aim up. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty
You were
good.
listening. You were listening to Sean Ryan.
Yes, I was.
We listen to
Yeah.
the same podcast.
Yeah, we kind of do, I guess. But yeah, you can't. I think we talked about Sean Ryan on the last episode, maybe, or the one before that. But I like that summary. That was simple, you know.
Live in the
It was like,
moment,
yeah,
but
live in the
aim up.
moment, but aim up with your actions, and
Yeah,
because that helps, man. We're young. Like, this is the best part of our lives. We don't need to be like, I met a guy the other day, and he's like 18, and he's all excited because he just got a new job with his 401k. And you know what he's excited about? He's not even excited that he got his 401k. He's excited to turn 65 or however old it is
he's
to
already
access that
quit.
thing. Now, I know there's a lot of life between 18 and 65, so I wouldn't be surprised if over the next few years something happens and he starts enjoying life in the present. But just to hear that guy say that, it was like, man, I mean, sorry for you, man. Like, I don't know exactly where I'll be at 65, but I think it'll be all right because I'm enjoying life now and I'm trying to aim up. And
Yeah,
I'm not going to like live life now being excited about turning 65.
Yeah, that's depressing. That kid's already given up on anything. He's already checking out.
Yeah.
That sucks.
But to be fair,
Yeah.
I mean, I know I've said stupid things a lot like that in my life. And so
Yeah,
thankfully, you know, the good Lord allows us to go through life and have all kind of crap happen to us that you can say something like that, but a year from now, I mean, he might be out there, you know, preaching a whole different gospel. So,
I hope so.
yeah, probably hope so too. He's my well, not my cousin, but he's my cousin-in-law. So hope so too.
Yeah, but
Cool.
and well, another thing, my mother's not very happy that I do this. She supports it because what I didn't tell y'all is that my father also actually broke his neck doing this. So
Oh,
he was quadriplegic, and he broke his neck in '98. So there was a lot of my mother wasn't so keen about me racing and being a part of this, but Dad still, even in a wheelchair, he was all about it. So that's kind of what fueled me. He was able to keep going in a wheelchair where a lot of people don't with two legs. So kind of figure I could do it too.
Well, it's one of those things, man. I was having a conversation with somebody this past weekend about it. Like, there's a certain element to it. It's like, man, you could get hit by a bus tomorrow, right?
Yep.
Like that. It's an old trope, but
It's a
some
very
people
true
can
one.
fit more life into 20 years than other people can into 80, right?
Yep.
So, like, clearly, just dude, we don't know you from Adam. We just got hooked up through mutual friends, but just sitting here talking to you for the last 2 hours, like, dude, you're doing something you're really knowledgeable about, really passionate about, and something that, like, gets you up in the morning and gets you excited. And gosh, a lot of people can go their whole life without something like that. So,
Yeah, very fortunate.
Yeah, but yeah, there's risk involved. But shoot, man, there's risk driving to your cubicle in Tyson's Corner. Like,
Yeah,
life
sure
has
is.
risk.
Yeah, they always say like you're not going to break. You'll be safe just sitting. You can be safe just sitting on a couch doing nothing. But what's the point of that?
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and it's kind of too like, like I played football growing up, and I know rodeo guys say it too. It's probably the same thing with jockeys to a certain extent. It's like the moment you try to go half speed or ease up, like that's when you get in a dangerous situation, right?
Yeah.
Is like the moment you're not completely committed to what you're doing. Then
Yeah, it's like
for
if a
sure
jockey
you are
stops
gonna-
riding to a fence, that's when shit happens.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, man, I like just sitting here talking to you. Like, I'm fired up to like go and ride some colts tomorrow and just do what I really like to do.
I've got one for you.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah,
Yeah, get Joe to come up there and flag you.
Yeah. Yeah, as long as I can record everything for Instagram content, I'm perfectly happy to come help you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
You bet.
But yeah, man, it's just like that's kind of why we started this podcast. It's just it's fun talking to people who get excited about what they do and excited about their craft. And like clearly you're one of those guys, so it's awesome. It's been really fun talking to you, man.
Well, I was happy to get in touch with y'all, and I'm definitely listening to more of your podcast, and I enjoyed. I just only listened to one. I can't lie and say I listened to a whole bunch of them, but it was fun just listening. I was cleaning stalls, listening to y'all, and it was just chatting about horses, this and that, and things that it's hard to communicate with other people. When you're just going to the bar chatting with folks if you're not up to what the football team's doing this week. So I enjoy listening to y'all talk about it, and to know that other people are thinking about the same stuff. It's it's a nice. I'm glad y'all are doing this.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Thank
man.
you.
That I mean, that right there just kind of makes it worthwhile, because that's kind of how we felt. Was there wasn't a podcast that was talking about this kind of stuff, at least not one we knew about. So we just decided to make it, and we want to talk to interesting people in the horse world pursuing what they want to do.
Yeah. Well, if y'all ever want any recommendations, I know a lot of crazy horse people.
Oh, we'll hit you up for sure. Now, I wouldn't mind maybe next year Virginia Gold Cup. I'll text you the days leading up if you've got any sharp pointers on who to bet on or anything like that.
I might point you in the right direction.
Yeah, I bet. Awesome. Well, hey man, I don't know if you want people looking you up or following you, but do you want to plug your social medias or your barn or anything like that? Your horses you've got running right now? Anything you want to plug while you're on here before we wrap up?
I'd say just probably go check out steeplechase racing if you can. Go to the National Steeplechase Association. Maybe there's one close by on the East Coast that you all live by. Go check it out. If you're in Virginia area, Northern Virginia in the springtime, come to the Point to Points. But if anyone's got any questions about the sport or they want a horse in training, they can just look me up as Sam Cockburn on Facebook. Or if they want and have any questions. But no, I don't have any plugs or anything like that. Just hope this helped inform people about the sport.
Yeah. Well, I'll wrap it up by saying I had an absolute blast at my first steeplechase, and not just because it was like drinking beer with a whole bunch of my friends. Like, it is an awesome sport, and the Gold Cup is just an awesome event, top to bottom, from the beginning of the day to the end, and I'd recommend it as anyone who's interested in horses would have a ton of fun. So, yeah,
right on.
Steeplechasing needs to be bigger, in my opinion.
I appreciate that.
Sounds good.
All right.
Great meeting you and learning from you, Sam.